Welcome. No, wait, that's John Oliver. Welcome to the Serious TV Drama Podcast with Scot and Dan. I'm Scott, and with me as always, the Arnold to my Gordon and the cure for our boredom, it's Dan. How you doing tonight, Dan?
I'm doing very well, actually. It's been a very long time since we've recorded, and I have this just big, stupid grin on my face as we do it. It's just kind of like, stepping back into something that we've missed for a very long time, even though it might end up being very, very odd and maybe not great. But we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, I believe this is probably the longest quote-unquote sabbatical we've ever taken in between podcasts. I remember in the past there was once or twice due to either technical issues or disgruntlement between host issues, if I remember, that we had taken extended breaks, but they usually tend to be like 3 weeks, 4 weeks. But we've been gone for over 2 months now.
Yeah.
So, and, let's just say we took a summer vacation and leave it at that.
And we were podcasting pretty hard in the spring, so it doesn't hurt to have a little bit of time to get our batteries filling up again.
Yeah, and moving forward, I mean, we obviously will be podcasting again in the future, but I just felt that we needed to take it back a few notches because it just started to become like, okay, how many hours a week are we devoting to this? It's just gotten crazy, especially with all the shows that we do, whatever, but
yeah, it was fun talking. It was fun talking about Twin Peaks, but I just kind of work was really unpleasant in July, and I started to get burned out. And it was getting hard to get over to my friend's house to watch the episodes, and it just kind of all of a sudden it's just bam, several episodes had passed, and we weren't even really talking about podcasting. I'm sure you had some stuff going on too, so it just kind of worked out where even though we were having a good time discussing it, we didn't quite get back to it.
Yeah, I mean, same here. I mean, I had to rely on the access to Showtime via my friends, Mike and Adrian, who allow me access to their home, whether they're there or not, so I could watch it. But, yeah, it just, life got in the way. But here we are. We're back to talk about, I don't know how much we're going to talk about. We're going to talk about the final 10 episodes of the show. We're probably going to focus a lot on those final 2 episodes in particular. When last we left off, we had chatted about probably the most significant episode, maybe not just of this series, but maybe of television of the past year, just at least from an artistic point of view, if nothing else, or a strange point of view. And of course, that was part 8, which reminds me, although we are here to talk about parts 9 through 18, especially parts 17 and 18, I feel the completist in me feels the need to make one more reference going all the way back to part 8. Because if memory serves, it was about an hour or two after we had finished recording that podcast that something occurred to me. And I was smacking my face, doing the face palm kind of thing, like, oh, I can't believe I didn't say that during the podcast. Oh, we'll just do it next week. And then, that didn't quite happen. So and again, this isn't some sort of revolutionary theory. I believe that most people think this anyway at this point. But at the time, people really weren't chatting about it. And I felt like so smart that I thought of it. Now I feel like, oh yeah, everyone knows that now. But I just want to get it out of the way. When we were talking about part 8, and specifically, you had the one section that took place in the 1940s, with the whole atomic bomb blast, whatever. And then next thing you know, we're in the 1950s. And the amazing sequence with, the sooty woodsman, going all around the small town and, making like kids in the hall and crushing people's heads and all that other stuff. But the big significant thing that was happening during that section was that weird, I don't remember what we called it, that weird frog fly creature thing that we saw, kind of, sprouting up and eventually making its way into that poor girl's bedroom and basically, going inside her mouth and presumably gestating or whatever. I believe, and again, I haven't gone back to listen to it, I believe I didn't really have much thought or theory as to what that was or what that meant. And it didn't occur to me till later on that same evening. If in fact, if everyone believes that episode to be to a large extent, like the origin of Bob, right? That's probably what people tend to say: origin of evil, origin Bob, whatever. Yeah. What I didn't say during that podcast, and maybe just because it hadn't really occurred to me in coherent thought, because it was hard to have a lot of coherent thoughts about that episode, I think, was I realized that whole if the thing that in the 40s was kind of like the creation or the dawn of evil, of Bob or whatever, to some extent, I thought what was going on in the 50s was the literal physical manifestation of Bob. And so we see this frog-fly thing as this kind of this evil entity kind of thing, but it needs a place to, I think I used the word incorrectly a few moments ago, gestate, to eventually take human form. So what I thought was actually happening, and it kind of works reasonably well timeline-wise. Of course, time really doesn't mean a heck of a lot on this show, and especially when we get to that finale. I think that by that creature, basically, in my mind, not just going inside that girl, but essentially impregnating her, where it's going to, grow inside her, that I think that she eventually will give birth, the physical birth, to the creature that we come to know as Bob. Kind of works because it was like the mid-50s, and when we saw Bob, it was, 1990, I guess, 89, 90, when Twin Peaks was on, when it first started, whatever. So that would make it a creature that would have been 30-something years old. Yes, I know the actor was clearly older than that, but I don't think this is Twin Peaks. I don't think that means a damn thing. But it kind of made sense that was how he would have taken on a tangible human form, and that's why the woodsmen were everywhere and like almost like clearing the decks for him for this to happen, I thought. So I just might want to make sure I got that out there. Again, I think a lot of people kind of think that or assume that already at this point. So it would have been a much more brilliant thing to say 2.5 months ago than it is now. I was like, oh, and I also suspect Leland Palmer might have killed Laura. Anyway, so
yeah, well, if some interesting people decide to binge our podcast, they would be listening to that episode right before this one. So maybe it would seem more closely tied.
So basically, it's a good thing I said it now because it'll work for podcast posterity if there is such a thing. All right, part 8 out of the way. Although it may pop up in conversation again, I have no idea. Not that we don't have enough else to talk about for this series. So, let's just dive into this thing. Do you want to go general overall opinion first, or just start tackling certain topics or characters? Or how do you want to do this? I see the floor to you to guide me for a change.
Yeah, I have no preference as to what order we do stuff in. If you want, we can try to talk about stuff in a like the way it aired, but that might be kind of hard too because it's been so long.
Oh, I have no intention of trying to go tick by tick. Yeah. We're not doing, and then in part 9, and then there will be no recapping here.
Yeah, and I watched almost the entire season in 2-episode blocks anyway, so it's really, it's even harder for me to know what the heck happened when.
Yeah, I think it's going to be more talking about, specific characters, and because when we think of characters, and we can think of storylines such as they were on this show. Some were more actualized storylines, some not so much. But I kind of feel like maybe we should just give some general overall opinions before we dive in, just so people know where we're coming from. I wouldn't. We're in the same book. I wouldn't exactly say we're on the same page, which I think is fine. I think that'll actually make it a more interesting listen. But
Yeah.
Because I like you example, I know that you're a major David Lynch fan as far as I can tell, as far as I've known you. So I think, and that's kind of like your approach to a certain extent, I think.
Yeah, I definitely tend to enjoy what I've seen of him. It's not like it's at the point where I like go out of my way to like find the movies that he's done that I haven't seen that are a pain in the ass to get on Blu-ray or whatever. Because there's a fair amount of them that are just due to all these tangled licensing issues and whatever they're not easily obtainable. So I wouldn't say I've like that, but everything I've seen of that he's done, it tends to for the most part agree with me, even if like some of it's just like like Eraserhead, where like this is interesting. I don't know if I can say I like it or dislike it because it's just like what the hell am I watching here? But I find a way to appreciate certain aspects of it and that kind of thing.
Right, right. Well, that makes sense. I mean, I can't claim that I've seen everything of David Lynch's. I do know of a couple things I haven't seen, but I would say I've at least seen the bulk of his work over time. And that does, and clearly, the more familiar you are with David Lynch's work, the more that's going to inform watching a show like this, especially since he directed all 18 episodes. So this more, perhaps more so than the original Twin Peaks series. This was really all David Lynch. I mean, I know Mark Frost as well, but it kind of felt that for the most of this series, from what I know of these two men, this felt more guided by Lynch than Frost for a good chunk of it, which isn't to slight Frost. It's just this really had David Lynch stamped all over it, and then some. I thought.
Right. Yeah, it definitely had that kind of feel where, I mean, as you watch how Lynch's work, has kind of evolved since as time passes and tends to become, more and more out there. It just kind of this definitely has that feel where there's a lot of that just shooting stuff up in the dark, and then every now and then, Frost will throw a lasso up there and pull back down to earth a little bit, at least part way sometimes. But yeah, I agree.
Yeah, and you can even suspect which parts are Frost might be more behind at times. It's like, oh, that actually made a little bit of sense there. Thanks, Frost. So the way I was imagining the way we kind of look at this to a certain extent. I mean, obviously, I'm making a generalization here because I don't mean to put myself in one category and you in another. But I kind of, over the last several weeks, more when we communicate online, like via Facebook or whatever, I always felt like, okay, I think your approach tends to be more of a fan, and I approach more as a critic, so to speak. That doesn't mean I'm not a fan of certain things, and that doesn't mean you're not critical of certain things. But I think that's kind of where our approaches come from. So that might simply mean you're more willing to give the benefit of the doubt, or things won't bother you as much as they might me, for example. And that I got a feeling that's probably going to pop up here and there as we talk. Maybe not that much. We'll see. Depends on how much. I mean, I think I'm fairly positive about it overall. But like we were just talking just a few nights ago, and we were talking about the perspectives of another well-known TV critic, and it was funny because we're not even talking about the show. We're talking about a critic talking about the show. And we had a difference of opinion on how the critic saw the show. And I was like, that's going to make podcasting about the show interesting if we can't even agree what the critic was saying. Because you're saying, he was mostly negative. Like, no, I think he was more positive. And I agreed with his negativity because I thought it was worth it.
Yeah.
But,
I think it might be the kind of thing where, where you were lining up with the way he was thinking and I was lining up with the other guy. So then it kind of felt, like, what he was saying was, more contrary to what I was thinking and feeling.
Right. So I could see that. That's kind of funny.
I went into this show. I mean, I'm a huge fan of the original show, and I think we discussed Firewalk with Me on a few of these episodes. How I started out hating it and ended up liking it a lot by the third or fourth time I watched it. So I like it. I was able to bridge the gap to that I mean, yeah, I mean, you know how Fire Walk with Me is. It's not, there's a lot of incoherent, odd stuff and weird editing choices and just, the kind of stuff that has driven a fair amount of people crazy about this newest season. So, but it just at some point, I don't know, maybe from watching weirder movies than I used to back in the day, I just got to a point where that kind of stuff doesn't really bother me anymore. As long as I guess I can't say as long as it has a point, because
most of it, come on.
that can't be said. But if it manages to, kind of fit with the feel of the movie and like even some of the the stuff that just doesn't make any sense and it's just weird, it does kind of help create a certain atmosphere for the movie where it doesn't make any sense and they could have cut this out, but I think at least for me it contributes to a general feeling of this is unsettling and this is really wrong and what the heck's going on here.
Right. I think I actually did rewatch for the first time in 20 something years Fire Walk with Me, and I think I did it after our last podcast.
I believe so, yes.
Yeah. So let me just go on record now that I've seen it again, and I'll say that yes, on one hand, there are certain things in that movie that absolutely help to inform a lot of what we see in this series, or a good chunk of it, and they certainly make enough references to it. However, as far as my opinion of it as a film, the only difference, in my opinion, from where it was 20-something years ago was when I went and saw that, and I think I saw it in a fucking movie theater, quite frankly. Huh. So back then I was more angry, really? A prequel? I read I already read Laura Palmer's diary. I didn't need this. I want to know what happened to Cooper, you bastards. So that, obviously, that feeling wasn't there anymore. But yeah, I still didn't like it very much. I just there's parts I like, and then I'm like, oh, can we just stick with Chris Isaac and Kiefer Sutherland for a while instead of they just disappear after the first 15 minutes? And all it did was it kind of reminded me the irony. I don't think maybe irony is not the right word, but how funny it is that when I watched the original series, I was never a fan of Laura Palmer herself. And there's nothing wrong, and there's nothing inherently wrong with the actress, or Cheryl Lee.
Yep.
And her performance, it's exactly what Lynch wants. It's exactly what she's supposed to do. I just find her annoying as a character to the point where it's to be really morbid about it, I don't really mind that they killed her because she's screeching and screaming every 5 minutes. I'm just oh, shut up, Birdie. I know that's her patented thing, but it just became grating on me after a while.
That's true, but I mean, you got to view it in some context too. I mean, that character's getting molested by her fucking dad, evil spirit. So you wouldn't expect that person to be the funnest person to hang out with or spend any time with. You would expect a person so
absolutely.
I can see how.
I also don't want to spend an hour and 20 minutes with them either. you know. But anyway, so just to establish, because when we spoke, I hadn't seen it, so now I have seen it. And there is a little bit of me that regrets not doing a rewatch of Twin Peaks. A little bit. But I remembered the show pretty well. I did watch it. I owned it. I was one of those people who taped it all on VHS, and I watched those tapes a million times back in the 90s. So even if I haven't watched it recently, the rewatch, hey, I've seen the show a good 2, 3, 4 times through myself. Probably more the first 7 or 8 episodes, at least up until the Bob reveal. Less so the second half of season 2, where I felt the show kind of went off the rails and just became kind of annoyingly soapy and even when they start to kind of get me back towards the end, I think it might have been too late for me at that point, and maybe for ABC as well, quite frankly.
Yeah, and it's a fun show to watch, but to be honest, I mean, this new season, it was just so far out there and just kind of, I mean, did its own thing where, I mean, it really wasn't necessary. I mean, the friend that I watched it with, I mean, he hadn't seen any Twin Peaks before we started watching it, and he hasn't even finished the original stuff, and he was still able to enjoy the experience, even if, a lot of the stuff didn't make sense. But I mean, a lot of the stuff isn't supposed to make sense, apparently. Yeah. So,
and that's one of the funny things about this series now. This revival of it, the return, it was other than just knowing a few of the basics, to a certain extent, you don't really need to have watched the original series. I think you need to know a little bit. There are certain things you should know. But a lot of it doesn't have much connection to what we saw in the original series, other than just like, oh, this happened, and that's why we're dealing with this for the entire season, whatever. So if someone just gave you a synopsis and maybe showed you a few scenes, I think that might be good enough. You wouldn't have to go through all of it so much. Although it was a strange choice that, or maybe not a strange. I shouldn't say it was a strange choice, but it was interesting that we got this 18 episode revival of the series, and other than the little bits here and there that were scattered in the early episodes, usually with the sheriff's department or going through the old evidence of the case or whatever, it didn't really seem to have much to do with Laura Palmer until suddenly we got to the end, and then all of a sudden that became the focus, which I thought was kind of like, oh, it's kind of going back to what the original series was really the focus of, and where this all came from. And
it kind of makes sense too, like, since that's like, when we finally get to see the actual Dale Cooper again. I mean, he's just been sitting there stewing in limbo for 25 years, probably, I suppose giving a fair amount of thought to his dealings with that case. So I mean, I guess it kind of makes sense that would be the time for such a thing to come back into the forefront, but it definitely came back into the forefront pretty hard there.
Pretty much. I wonder if he ate the whole 25 years he was in the lodge. Anyway.
Just chewed gum.
How does he go to the bathroom? Anyway. Does the lodge have a bathroom in it? It must.
Speaking of going to the bathroom, if they do end up doing another season, I hope since Miguel Ferrer has passed away, I at the very least hope that they let Kiefer Sutherland come back as that character if they need another FBI agent, CSI type character.
Right.
Nice.
One of the interesting aspects of this revival was the fact that, you had people who had passed away, but people who passed away during the making of the series. I mean, it's really quite wonderful that Miguel Ferrer actually was able to survive the entire series, and he passed away after he finished filming. But it did lend a certain unexpected poignancy to all his moments. Just if you know that, he's dying. You can just look at him. He's his appearance is somewhat more emaciated than he's ever looked before. So cause he died of a form of cancer, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe so. And that's the kind of thing too, where like where we're having a different experience. The people that have watched the show before are having a different experience than people that are just watching it, randomly watching it for the first time, because we actually have, somewhat of an emotional connection to, I guess some of the characters that we've seen before, and some of the actors, I guess, that we've seen in this and other things, and our knowledge of what's happened. So that definitely changes the experience for us a little bit. Well, for somebody who a newbie would just be like, oh, this episode is dedicated to this actor I don't know anything about. Whatever.
Yeah, it certainly added something, kind of really deeply moving and sad to all the moments with the log lady calling Hawk, because the woman, what's her name? Claudia Coulson?
Yeah, Catherine Coulson.
Catherine Coulson, thank you. No notes. Anyway, the fact that she was genuinely dying when they were filming her. I mean, the fact that she had the little oxygen tube things, I think that was her. I think she needed that, and she passed away shortly thereafter. So that was really unexpected going into the series, and because the log lady was just that odd, one of those many odd, quirky little characters from the original series, but became so iconic as a representative of Twin Peaks. So it was. It certainly added some, especially when she says that I'm dying. I'm like, oh my God, she really is. It's like watching Johnny Cash sing "Hurt," and you realize, Johnny Cash is probably not that far away from dying as he's singing this song.
Yeah.
So, I almost think we need to go right to the final two episodes. Although I think we'll be talking about, we can talk about. I mean, we'll be talking about Dougie during this podcast and other things like that. But I think we need to go right to those final two episodes
Yeah.
because
So right. So when you did you watch the last two episodes at the same time, or did you have to split them up between two different days?
I watched them two different. I watched them back to back days, so I did not watch
Okay.
them. I did not watch them together um, as they were shown, which may or may not have been the intention. So
Yeah.
that might have impacted the effect to a certain extent. I'm not sure.
Right. I mean, yeah. I mean, I think it's probably still okay because I mean, they have the musical interlude cutting the two episodes in half anyway. So I mean, you're used to that format because that's what they've done the entire season. So it still felt like two separate episodes, even though by the time you're done watching the second one, it kind of all blends together in a big old murky mess.
Well, I see. I would say that those two episodes really represent two different sides of the show, of the
Yeah.
series. Um, so I absolutely view them as two very distinctly different hours of this series and of television overall. Um, whereas the episode 17, um, probably to a certain extent, in a lot of ways, had the most cohesion and really, plot moving forward compared to most episodes of the show.
Right.
And even though there was obviously some really crazy, wacky stuff that happened in it, you know,
Yeah.
but you could pretty much follow everything that was happening, and everything kind of
Yeah.
made a certain amount of sense. And then you get the second hour, and then you're like, wait, what? Wait, how long have they been driving now? Wait, did that motel just change the way it looked from the night before? And I'll thank my friend again because when I was watching it, it was the first time I was watching, and my friend came home and she decided to watch the final 40 minutes and she'd already seen it before, so she had an advantage on me for sure. And maybe she's just more observant than I was that day. So she was pointing out this, oh, you notice that motel is not the same motel. I was like, wait, what? So I rewound, like, oh wow, I didn't realize that when Diane and Cooper go in, it's a one-story structure. When he comes out the next day, it's a two-story structure, and the door is different. And of course, I recognized that the car was different. It's like everything's different except for the interiors of the house. Like, okay, interesting. And it wasn't until later I was like, oh, I think I sort of know what happened, but maybe. There's a lot of theories going on about
Oh
that
yeah.
final episode. But with episode 17, it's less about theories, it's just more about um, things coming together. And maybe that was as close as this show was going to come to trying to, in any way, appease people that wanted something a bit, maybe not grounded is not the right word for this show at any point in time, but something like, okay, I see what's going on here. I see the battle between good and evil, and why this character got popped in here with his magic green glove and all that other stuff. And look, they got everyone in the same room together. Wow,
Huh.
that's really the most bizarrely staged thing ever. But okay.
So when you finished episode 18, what was your like initial gut reaction? Pretty much as soon as you're done with it.
Well, I'll be super honest about it. So I'm watching the episode, and I'm aware that we're clearly getting to the closing minute or two because I know how long I've been watching it for. And then I was what as it was. Then there's that moment where I believe it goes black, and my friend will attest. I said, it's like, oh, they better not have fucking ended it that way. And then the next image we have is Laura Palmer whispering into Cooper's ear, and it's done in like super duper duper slow motion as the credits play over it. So obviously, my instinctual reaction was what I just said. But after
Yeah.
that, after I let the
Yeah.
credits roll, and I didn't really speak for like a minute or two. I was kind of like a hmm. And and the first thing, one of the first things I said after was like, well, I didn't hate it. I'm there's part of me that's frustrated by the fact that there's no telling there's going to be another season of this. So in a weird way, those bastards just gave me a deja vu moment from like 25 years ago. It's like, you really, you're going to do that to us again? But what I really liked about it was through the confusion of what was going on and the frustration of some of what was going on, because it's the final hour and you're eating up time in these long car rides, which is maddening. And of course I should know better, because it's certainly not the first time this series has had things go on so long and you're like, get to it. But just knowing it was the final hour just made it more frustrating, I think. But I will enjoy something that really starts making my brain percolate. And I just started trying to figure out theories and ideas behind it and what was really happening. And I haven't had it, because I don't have it at my home or whatever. So I don't really have the opportunity to go back and like rewatch it again, at least not anytime soon. But fortunately, due to how the story was really stripped down in that final episode and how easy it is to remember it, quite frankly, I don't really need to re-see it. I kind of remember it pretty darn well. And like you, I've read a few reviews of the episode or the final two episodes online over the last week or so, just to see if other people's heads were where mine was. And I seem to be in the same ballpark as most people. Some a bit more fanatically positive about it, some a bit more negative than I am. I was not negative about the finale, other than the aforementioned time wasting and driving. I got frustrated by both him driving with the Laura Palmer doppelganger, whatever we want to call her, or driving with Diane, which also went on a bit long. But take those things out of it, I was like, okay, I was pretty much intrigued, mystified, wondering what was going on. And then when a certain phrase was said towards the end of the episode, I went, wait a minute. Oh, son of a bitch. And that's when all of a sudden things started to fall in place in my mind. I was like, at least as far as what might have just happened.
Right.
And obviously I'm talking about when Cooper says, wait, what year is it? And I started really thinking about that. Now, what did you take that to mean? Because every time I think I have an explanation for it, and it makes perfect sense, then all of a sudden there's a reason why that makes no sense. But then this is David Lynch, and I don't know. I don't know how. Let's put it this way: he's not going to be adhering to fine detail to make sure things make sense the way, say, Zemeckis had to for Back to the Future. let's put it that way. But when he said that, was that the first time that notion had occurred to you? Because I'll admit it's the first time it occurred to me when he says that. And what do you take that to mean? And what's your interpretation of that?
Oh, you're wondering if like maybe they were like in the past there, possibly?
Well, there's certain things they keep saying throughout the series.
Yeah,
they talk about dreams a lot in the series, and especially when they refer to Gordon's dream about Monica Bellucci, about and who is the dreamer and whatever the dream of the dreamer. Because obviously, if there's one thing, whether it be the original series or this Showtime season, there are lots of things have a dreamlike quality, which I think Lynch is really pushing. And I think he almost uses that as an excuse for not just the bizarre, quirky, crazy shit that we see, but also the things that seem to be somewhat oddly meandering and don't really have much of a reason or focus, because we all have dreams like that.
Oh, God, yeah. Oh, man, the stuff that happens in my dreams. Ugh.
Now,
so, yeah,
Again, whether I want to sit through some guy sleeping for 6 minutes, I don't know. That kind of thing. But, yeah. But they also talk about the past and the present and the future a lot. Even in these last two episodes, I think it's mentioned by is it Mike, the guy in the one armed dude?
Yeah.
I think he makes a reference to what is past and what is future, and I think it's said a few times.
Right. Yeah, it's been said in the original series and stuff like that before too.
But I also think a lot of this also hinting at what we're seeing here, because I mean the thing to remember early on is doesn't Cooper has like that moment where it's oh, I know, it was when he goes to see Philip Jeffries, who, because obviously David Bowie passed away, because David Bowie was Philip Jeffries in Fire Walk with Me, so now Philip Jeffries is essentially this giant, I don't know, teapot or something.
I guess
because he's just puffing up the little things of smoke But it's interesting when you see that symbol come out, and my first one's like, oh, he's creating the number 8, and then I realized, like, no, wait, that's not really the number 8. I wonder if it's like an infinity symbol or something like that. It's definitely analogous to whatever's going on here with time, because Dale wants to go back to, I think he says like February of 1989. That would.
Yeah, I think it's February 20-something, 1989 or something like. I don't remember exactly.
And then I guess what seems to play out is, even though it's never specifically said, it seems like Cooper is trying to do what he can to prevent Laura Palmer from being killed. I mean, that's my assumption. Whatever.
Right. Yeah, I guess I'll tell you my impression of it. When I watched them both together. When I got done with the episode, I had pretty much the same reaction that you did, and my friend that was watching with me too. We just had to like, what? You're ending it there? Like, oh, what the hell was that? What was all that? And the driving did to me too much, other than the fact that I was just really, really tired when I watched it, so I kept nodding off during it. But I mean, it was pretty much just. I mean, the episode was essentially driving, freaky, creepy, weird sex scene with really loud music that was freaky. More driving, some weird stuff, driving, going to a gas station, driving. So, knocking it off a couple times was okay. But as that stuff was happening, I never really got. I wasn't watching the clock or worried that I wasn't gonna it wasn't like something. The show wasn't something like Lost, where I had this list of things that I wanted done. And this idea, certain expectations. By this point in the season, I didn't, other than wanting to, what the fuck was going on with Audrey, and and a few, and we'll get to that later, of course. But a few other things, there wasn't really anything that I was just like, okay, this definitely is something that needs to happen, before the end. I wasn't going to like that. So a lot of the stuff where they were driving and just driving, it served to be more of just creep me out a little bit and just kind of build a little tension for me as I just okay, what's going to happen here, where they're going to go. I don't know what to expect, what the hell's going on here. So it helped to even though I was groggy as hell, it still helped to produce some tension. But yeah, when the episode got done, I was just like, and it wasn't like super angry. I was just like, just like we would get if we were watching a TV show that was coming back that had just a crazy cliffhanger and we'd have to wait another year or 9 months or whatever for it to come back. It was more of a reaction like that than like, you ruined my life. I wish I never would have watched this, blah. Because the internet has been, the Twin Peaks community has been really, really massacring each other over the last 8 days or so. It's, at least on Facebook, it's just been a brutal mess. As people that didn't like the show are just absolutely just shitting on people that liked it because they assume that they're in love with Lynch and they'll put up with whatever kind of foolishness that he does if it doesn't make any sense, and it just goes back and forth, and it's just been just like the Lost thing where just people are just shredding each other right at the end, and it doesn't bother me. I find it more entertaining than anything that these people are just ripping each other to shreds over something like this that's really difficult to put in a box. But but yeah, the same thing as I went home and went to bed after that, but I had a hard time falling asleep. Spent some time processing it, and had interesting dreams, and the next day it just was kind of like like I was just slowly awakening to different possibilities as I tried to figure out what the hell I just saw. And what the heck happened. And
Right.
my friend that watched it with me had the similar experience where he just comes to work, just looks a little shell shocked. I mean, we basically both had a like what the hell happened on Twin Peaks hangover the next day at work, and just kind of just walked around looking just a little bit confused most of the day.
Yeah. I mean, if there is something like this is obviously going to be somewhat polarizing. It would be weird if everyone was just totally on board with it. Just as well as be weird if everyone hated it as well. I mean, I think the nature of the show and the nature of this season has been to really divide people to a certain extent. And there are people, you're going to get people who are either going to embrace it completely. You're going to get people who are like, what the hell am I watching? Why am I bothering with this? And then you're going to get people who, probably where I fall, somewhere in the middle, where I think there are amazing aspects of this season and this series. And I'm thoroughly glad that this incredible, so many ways it could go horribly wrong and be a total failure, still was made. I think I'm glad I got to see it. Are there a number of things I could have done without? Yes, but we'll get to that a little bit. As far as the finale is concerned, as far as questions, I far more than a show like, to use your example because that's the most obvious one, Lost. I knew when they brought this back from the beginning. It's like, okay, do not expect any number of things to be answered by the time this ends. So that was certainly not going to be a surprise to me. The only thing that might have surprised me about, the bigger things about this series or about the season was just how long it took to get to Agent Cooper actually appearing. The weird thing was, as annoyed or frustrated as I was with that earlier on in the season, believe it or not, I actually became kind of okay with it after a while. I was like, all right, I know it's going to happen eventually. While I wasn't super entertained, although I was impressed with McLaughlin as Dougie, but I started to become more entertained by the things around him. and it kind of kept me going through all that, especially especially the Mitchum brothers. I love the Mitchum brothers. I don't think I've liked Jim Belushi this much since. Wow, I can't think of anything I've liked Jim Belushi in. No, there's something. Oh, he was good in there was a series last year that was on HBO. He had a part in Show Me a Hero, which was done by the guys from The Wire and stuff. He's actually very good in that. And at that time, I just went, wow, Jim Belushi's actually good in something. But I really loved him in this series. His reactions to things, everything from the finale, or even going back to when him talking about the dream where he shows up with a pie, all that stuff. I was like, who would have thought of all things that in the revival of Twin Peaks, one of my favorite things would be Jim freaking Belushi. What the hell's going on here? Thank you, David Lynch, for that. You kind of Tarantino'd me on that one. But yeah, I didn't expect a lot of questions to be answered.
No.
Now, that said, there are certain things I would have liked to have gone back to. And I don't just mean the Audrey thing, because I think the Audrey thing should be a separate conversation. Because, yeah, we'll get to that. But, I would have liked to have gotten into, for example, all the business with Sarah Palmer. And because, as we saw, every scene that we had with her in the series became, obviously, more and more darker and twisted. Everything from what she was watching on her TV, which were always kind of either really creepy or something that was repeating in a loop for some reason, and then leading all the way up to what happens in that bar when she basically does the thing where she peels back her face and the it within kind of rips apart that guy's throat and whatever. And then we never get back to that, and I was like, oh, I'm really interested in that because I don't even know if I want an explanation, because I think a lot of it's for us to figure out what's going on there. But I kind of wanted more to do with it. and
Yeah.
we never went back to it. So that kind of
Oh.
frustrated me a lot.
Well, I mean, we did see that one scene in episode 17 where, like, she's in the house and just, like, smashing the crap out of the picture of Laura. Not that that's really, like, explaining anything, but
Well,
it definitely is showing that something is happening.
right, but that's an important moment of her smashing the picture of Laura, but that's all we get.
No, and we definitely are led to believe that they're gonna get to that at some point because I mean they're trying to get to the Palmer house. I mean for the entire 8,000 miles of driving they do in part 18, so it's definitely like reasonable for you and of me and everybody to want and expect that to get resolved because I mean it's not like they promised it was going to happen, but the what little plot there was did indicate that we were going to see something where that was going to happen because they were just moving towards it, and all of a
Right,
sudden, they pulled the rug out from under our feet. I don't
right,
know.
because we're watching, we're expecting them to meet, and it's not just, and it goes beyond just, oh, Sarah Palmer's going to see her long lost dead daughter. It's like Sarah Palmer, or is it Sarah Palmer? What I don't know if that's actually Sarah Palmer at this point. Is something
Right.
in her, or is it another one of these doppelganger kind of situations? I'm not really clear on that. Um, which is the way the show is, of course. And then we don't get that. We get just this random woman who actually, as I understand it, turns out to be the actual owner of the house.
Yeah.
So that's interesting, I guess. Um, so so Cooper says, "What year is it?" Implying that we don't know. He's suddenly realizing maybe he's in another point in time. But there's so much about that doesn't make sense to me
Yeah.
because how could it possibly? How far back in the past could it possibly be if everything else looked fairly modern? Because if the Palmers were living there, obviously they were living there, in the late '80s, and I'm assuming they didn't just move in, so they'd probably been there for several years before that, or maybe they had lived. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It doesn't gel, especially when she talks about this house is owned by someone else before her and before her, and okay, this can't be the '60s or the '70s because the car and everything else, and just the way that everything outside looks. So I was like, okay, it can't be the past. Then I actually had the weird moment, like, could it be the future somehow?
Huh, yeah.
And then I was like, I guess that's possible. Then I was like, but how would that make any more sense? I couldn't really figure it out, and I was trying to determine what's going on here, and maybe there's something to be said for is Cooper now just in this endless loop of he's trying to do something to save Laura Palmer, but no matter what happens, maybe in some sort of I like to think he just keeps creating like alternate timelines and alternate universes or something like that, and no matter what, something's going to happen to the whatever Laura Palmer is in that universe. That you can't outrun evil or something because
Yeah.
guy with the green fist aside, evil does seem to be more triumphant than good on this show, quite frankly, as far as I've seen.
Yeah. Even though I did notice that while the evil they do tend to have wins, it never tends to work out well for them. So like yeah, I mean they'll manage to cause some mayhem, but whatever their like big plans are, at least in this season none of them tended to work pretty well. The doppelganger's plan didn't really didn't work out for him, and all of his assorted henchmen tended to meet sometimes bizarre ends and usually violent ends.
Right, that's true. Well,
Yeah.
I thought that was kind of amusing that throughout the last few episodes that it felt like, okay, Lynch, who's normally not all about tying up loose ends, but it's like, oh, but we're just going to all these threats have been ongoing for who knows how long, how many episodes. We're just gonna like bump out of the way, like that. It's like, oh, we're just gonna shoot him up here. We're gonna shoot that one there. We're gonna kill that one there. All the different hitmen, they're all gone. Clear path, whatever. Which was fine with me because I couldn't decide how much I liked or didn't like the Tim Roth, Jennifer Jason Leigh stuff. It was all right. It just felt like they were felt like they were slumming it a little bit for me. I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
know if it makes any
Yeah.
sense.
I was entertained by them, and most of the stuff that was on this season. But I don't think we needed to see any more of that than we did anyway. So I didn't leave the season wishing just like, oh, they should have had 5 more scenes with them.
No,
It was enough.
and
It
I
was
didn't.
enough.
I didn't dislike it. I was just like, oh, okay. It was for me. It was almost more about the stunt casting of those two parts than the characters and them both getting to do like absurd hick accents and stuff like that.
Huh. Yeah,
Um,
I
it's
with like the year thing. I haven't fell super far into the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what year it is exactly and that kind of stuff. I've been more focused on just kind of like the nightmare aspect of it. To me, like that final scene kind of feels like I don't know how many H.P. Lovecraft stories you've read, but it kind of feels like the way like one of those would end. Some adventurer goes into a weird temple or something and then just comes out and just completely confused, somebody screams and it's whatever, and that's just kind of how it felt to me, like these two characters are just confronted by this just unimaginable horror and confusion. They're just can't understand it. So I've been more just kind of like seeing it from that perspective and then trying to figure out the with like virtually no clues, like if it's actually a year or if it's some different reality or whatever the hell's going on. Because there's just so much information there, with the the names of the owners of the house and the previous owners of the house. Or they're giving you like all these little random bits and pieces that really just can't be tied together in any way, and it's just mad. It can be maddening trying to find a way to connect them.
Let me just make sure that my memory hasn't gotten foggy as it has at times in over the last year, because life. So they leave they walk away from the house, they walk back to the front of the house after they deal with the owner, and that's when Cooper suddenly starts to have the realization. He says, like, "Wait, what year is this?" And does Laura, or whatever her name is in this. I can't remember what her character's name was.
Yeah, Carrie Page.
Carrie Page. Wow, I should have remembered that. She just starts screaming, right?
Yeah.
Now,
because like you hear like a voice coming from the house saying Laura. That's,
I heard.
I guess it's my friend thought it was like Sarah Palmer's voice, and for me, whatever reason, in my like super fatigue state, I thought it was the bird from the original series. Remember that bird that like there was a parrot that would say Laura, and then like Leo or somebody killed the bird. For some reason, I thought it was a fucking bird.
I don't think it's either of those things.
Yeah,
I think it's Leland Palmer's voice.
Yeah,
I think the thing is it's and I thought it was more in her head, but whether it's in her head or not, I think it's triggering the memory of herself and remembering her father bellowing her name as he did on the show quite often. And what that triggers is what you were talking about earlier in the conversation about this is a girl who is systematically raped and whatever else by her father, and that's what triggers the screaming. So I think it's hearing her father's voice saying her name is what that was about. Okay, I just want to make sure I didn't miss something that maybe somehow I blinked and missed, like some sort of wacky subliminal image. Because at least in that hour we didn't have Cooper's face superimposed over the screen for the final several minutes, and which was a very interesting choice. And that was in episode 17. I kind of have a theory for that. Did you? What did you think of that?
No, it reminds me of something, and I just can't place it. And that's pretty much like I didn't give it any more thought as to exactly what was happening there than that. I spent all my time trying to just like, God, this reminds me of something, and it kind of feels like it reminds me of Twin Peaks, but I don't think it reminds me of Twin Peaks. But it's just like something somewhere that reminds me of, and it just drives me kind of crazy.
It's funny that this is Twin Peaks: The Return, but in so many ways, it didn't remind me of Twin Peaks throughout most of the show, except for key things and moments. But a lot of stuff we sat through and watched, it made me think more of David Lynch specifically and what he's done more than the series Twin Peaks, if that makes sense.
He's definitely changed. He's changed in the last 25 years, as have we all. So you can't blame this for not being the same as that. Of course, we can't blame that. But there's plenty of people whining whining online about how this is nothing like this isn't Twin Peaks.
I
This is
don't, I
this
don't, I
blah
don't,
blah blah.
yeah,
Well, yeah, well, fuck them people.
I don't
If,
care. I don't care about what
yeah,
other people are saying.
yeah.
I
If
like,
if David Lynch and Mark Frost say this is Twin Peaks, it's fucking Twin Peaks. So
yeah,
shut the fuck up.
no, it's definitely Twin Peaks. Um,
Yeah,
Now, it can be it's I would say it's more of a matter of opinion or taste as far as how Lynch himself has evolved as an artist or not.
yeah,
I'm not as enamored of some of his films as other people are. I like them but don't love them necessarily, such as
yeah.
like Mulholland Drive and Lost Highway, which are like two, which I know are two major ones. I like them, but I don't love them, and I have my issues with them, as I do with any film auteur or creator or whatever. He's done movies I really don't care for. I hate Wild at Heart. I despise that movie. I don't even. I've blanked most of it out of my memory. Thank God. I know. I used to remember. I hate this movie so much.
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet. So
And not to go down the rabbit hole of the most idiotic. Oh, let me rephrase. I shouldn't say that. That's not true. I shouldn't say idiotic. There has been this thing on one of the Facebook group pages that both of us, especially you, spend time in, where I guess from some other podcast or something, which can remain nameless since we don't get named on anyone else's podcast. Somehow the movie Dune has been a topic of conversation. You're actually a fan of that movie, from what I
yeah,
gather.
I mean, it's not like the best movie ever, like
Yeah.
I sometimes claim, just because I'm obnoxious. But I enjoy it. I can see why, just like any David Lynch thing, I can understand why people don't like it, and I can understand why people like it.
Yeah.
Probably because they're on drugs, but
Oh,
whatever.
I remember seeing that in the theater, and that being one of my least favorite film going experiences of all time. And I remember just saying after, it's like, it's a bad sign when you go to see a movie and they have to hand you a glossary before the movie just so you can figure things out. It's like, wait, did you just give me Cliff Notes for the movie? What?
I can understand why people don't like some of his stuff, and I think it's a fair argument to be made that some of the things that he's done as he's progressed aren't necessarily, maybe they're good, maybe they're not. It's totally subjective. I mean, you're a writer, and I can't imagine you ever writing something with just such a just no adherence to like a really clear plot and just kind of inserting all sorts of random stuff. So I'm
Yeah.
sure some of that stuff might be especially jarring for you. Me, I'm a freaking weirdo, so maybe I can tolerate it a bit more. But I don't know if I could say like, these things are necessarily an improvement. For like Firewalk with Me, for example. I mean, I can't really explain why they. I mean, he essentially cut out for the theatrical version. He cut out pretty much all the like the side characters from Twin Peaks. Like hours and hours of footage just wiped out. So there's no Sheriff Truman, there's no this, whatever, and he just cut out all that stuff. And then based on what we've seen in this new season, it's the same thing here, where there isn't a lot. There's a lot of stuff that just isn't these classic Twin Peaks characters. So for whatever reason, as time went on, he just moved away from that kind of stuff, and that's his right and prerogative. I don't know if it's necessarily a good thing or necessarily a bad thing. I suppose if you're going to have these characters do something stupid and annoying like most of them got stuck doing in the second half of season 2, then maybe having less of them is an okay thing. I don't know. It depends on if they had a good idea or not. But fun.
I think with the story, and I'm putting story in, air quotes right now. I think with the story or stories he wanted to tell, I think there wasn't much interest in going back to the bulk of the characters from the original series. So although many of them appear, they had little to no story, and in a way, it almost felt like a waste to even bother. Other than like, hey, look, hey, there's Big Ed again. I haven't seen him in a while. Or there's Norma. Okay. It was nice to see that, oh, look, at least they're still alive, kind of things. But at the end of the day, was other than maybe a moment here or a moment there, did anything with, say, Norma add anything to my experience of watching this? No, and stuff like that. And
Yeah.
it also led to other side characters that were new for the series, which I found beyond annoying, and I had wished he hadn't bothered with like everything that dealt with Shelley's daughter and her abusive or idiot boyfriend, husband, whatever the heck he was. I wasn't even clear on that, quite frankly. And I don't care if it was said. I just didn't care. I think I was starting to hit the fast forward button at a certain point with them. Did that add anything to my experience here? No. I wished it was that. Those are things that I felt were time wasters for me. Or sitting through Dr. Jacoby's rant one more time. I was like, oh God, I'm gonna kill somebody now. I just want to kill somebody.
Yeah, and I didn't mind, most of that stuff for the most part. I mean, some of it doesn't have a point. Maybe they're trying to make some kind of point that I don't get, and I just don't, feel the need to spend time on. I suppose maybe with some of the Jacoby stuff, if you listen to it really closely, there's some coded messages about some of the freaky stuff that's going on, whatever, and he's just making paranoid conspiracy nut rants about it.
You're being real charitable there.
Well, I'm just saying it's with the way I read the Frost book, and that kind of seemed with the kind of stuff that's covered in there, I could see that it actually could be that could be a valid theory. I just don't know if I need to go back and rewatch it, but I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I can't imagine what they would have done differently, or if I'd have liked it more or less. Some of the stuff could have been skipped. I'm okay with the fact that we didn't get a bunch of overt fan service just to make a bunch of people happy, because they didn't really seem to do much of any of that kind. There wasn't a lot of these old characters were usually reintroduced with no fanfare whatsoever. Every now and then they could they give one of them a sweet singing a really ridiculous song scene, but other than that, I don't know. But
well, my rule of thumb, and maybe something you touched on, because I look at a lot of these things that we talk about, whether this podcast or when we talk about other shows in the past, I do look at it from the perspective of a writer. And there's a rule, I'm gonna say rule. Fuck it, whatever. And it's not even a rule; just basic common sense, whatever. A scene should be doing one of a couple things, and if your scene isn't giving me more about character or giving me more about plot, then it better be entertaining. And if I don't know or care about either the character or plot, and I'm not entertained, then there's no reason for that scene to be there, and then you're just wasting my time. And that's a rule that Lynch deliberately breaks here. I was very see, here's my problem with Lynch, and it was my problem even with the original series. He has a tendency, and he did it again here. It's the being quirky for quirky's sake, and just seeing, and because he was given such free reign here. And by the way, I love that Showtime said, "Do your thing." That they clearly didn't. If they let Part 8 air the way it did, then they were like, okay, you can just do whatever you want. And I love that he got that opportunity. So I don't want to take that away from him. But I'm talking about scenes that either didn't go anywhere and never added to anything. And here's the thing, again, as a writer, scenes that weren't really well written. And so it wasn't like the dialogue was great, or the acting might have been all that great either, or the staging was kind of awkwardly done. Where there's a couple moments in the series and I know what he's doing, but I'm wondering why you're doing this, where he almost goes out of his way to stage something deliberately awkwardly. It's watching something out of an Ed Wood movie or something. And I'm very aware, I know he's doing that on purpose. I know he's doing that on purpose. He's just,
I know.
It's like him giving a middle finger to people like me, whatever. It's like, fuck you, I'm David Lynch. I'll even do it this way if I want.
Yeah, I'm sure there's some aspect. It's just hard to figure out, what the point of some of this stuff is with somebody that's, as far, as unconventional as Lynch. And a lot of this stuff, I mean, it's, you can try to figure out what's, maybe there's a point to it. Maybe, I don't know, but, I'm a little bit more forgiving about stuff that's deliberately, shitty and kind of deliberately pointless, like all those scenes of randos chattering at the roadhouse about who knows what. I know you're not a big fan of that, and I really don't care one way or the other. If they just cut those scenes, and I could just listen to the entire songs, which I generally liked, and you weren't a fan of for the most part, I would have been okay with that. But I'm not sure but the fact that it's being done deliberately instead of just like shitty writers that don't know what the hell they're doing, like making like lazy mistakes. I mean, there is a purpose to it. Maybe it's just being stupid. Maybe it's like, trying to like mock the shitty storyline, the shitty soap opera storylines in the second season when, Lynch and Frost had pretty much bailed on the show. Maybe they're just kind of like, kind of mocking that for some, reason that's, probably childish or whatever. I don't know, but I do tend to, if something is done deliberately, I tend to give it a little bit more of a benefit of the doubt because I don't know that it's bad per se. Maybe just I don't, my not getting it doesn't necessarily make it bad. But then again, I can totally understand why. Yeah, I mean, none of it would ever went anywhere at all.
No, I'll say it's bad, and it's bad is bad. Did you want 3 or 4 more scenes of Benjamin Horne and Ashley Judd, walking around the corners of the room looking for the humming noise? I was tired of that. And then we go back to Ashley Judd's husband, which ran like, oh, this guy and he's a cripple or whatever. I don't know what's going on there, and we never address that again.
Nope.
So should I? I was like, am I supposed to care about this? I'm gonna say no.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. I'm not. I can't explain why they do a lot of those scenes that where just weird random scenes that go nowhere. Some of them serve to create a more of like a disjointed atmosphere, but some of them are just pointless. And I suppose it's I'm sure there's somebody already cooking up a fan edit that just cuts out a bunch of stuff like that and might make something that is 12 hours long instead of 18 that I suspect you and a fair amount of other people would be more satisfied with.
Oh no, I want to spend another 7 or 8 minutes of Jerry Horne yelling at his foot that is not his foot or something.
Yeah.
I wouldn't mind. Here's the thing, I wouldn't mind even all those tangents that Lynch keeps going in these episodes if they didn't last so damn long. That's the problem, and why they bother me. It's not even that they bother me because they're not part of the bigger story. Because that doesn't matter. And if they were shorter, I'd be more entertained by them. But because they're longer, it kind of offsets the pace of the episode, and then I just become very aware. If I'm aware of something is going on too long, the only time I find that to be excusable is if you're doing it for humor, because there's a way you can make something really funny. Because okay, I can't believe how long this is going on, or you're doing it for some sort of underlying tension. And with some of these scenes, I was like, oh god damn it, let's get back. But anyway. I mean, I didn't mean to like guide the podcast into an overly negative thing about the show, but I did want to get a lot of that out of the way here because that was some of the stuff that I found kind of annoying or maddening.
Well, yeah,
but
if there's stuff you didn't like, there's no reason not to point that out.
I mean, of course, I didn't come back to podcast just to look. I'm willing to shake David Lynch's hand and pat him on the back, but I'm not here to blow him. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I'm gonna point out the stuff I like and the stuff I don't like. Speak now. Let's get to Audrey now. Let's just. I know how I feel about the Audrey stuff. I'm not sure I actually know how you feel about it. I'll just say that when I watched the original series, I, like probably a million or two other dudes, had a huge crush on Charlene Fenn at the time. I bought that issue of I think it was Playboy, which was really not that great. I think I still have it somewhere. And throughout the first half of the season, I kept wondering, are they going to bring Audrey back? Is she still in a coma? Did she die? What happened to her? And then they brought her back. How did you feel about what they did with Audrey Horne?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that they didn't exactly complete it is, I guess it bothers me. I mean, I think there's at least a possibility that they'll do something more in the future, but I think they should have at least, maybe not left it as open-ended as they did. And, and I don't mind stuff that doesn't have a clearly defined ending. I remember back, when I was young, things like that would bother me. Like, like the ending of The Thing, for example. I remember the first time I watched it, and it's like, fuck no! What happened?
No, that's a great ending.
Yeah, but it's a great ending. So as I've matured, I've grown to appreciate that kind of stuff more. But this isn't that. This is just kind of like I wouldn't say it's like a deliberate like, hey, fuck you, or like, hey, like, if you want to find out whatever, send letters to freaking Showtime. I don't know if it's necessarily that, but it's definitely more in line with that than it is with like like an ending like the Thing, where it's like constructed like in a very specific way, and then like
Well,
you're not left unsatisfied. You have something to think about, and you're never going to have an answer to that.
well, here's the question: the Audrey stuff.
Yeah.
Everything before the moment we see her looking in the mirror, which is the last thing we see of Audrey. Everything before that. Here's my question, because it goes to my theory, whatever. And again, I'm sure a million other people's theories, whatever. Did any of what we see before that happen?
I was convinced pretty much right away that none of that was actually real.
Okay.
I mean,
Okay. So
it,
because
initially maybe it was just like like, oh, Audrey was beautiful on the original series, and like, oh, and she's married to this like just not as attractive as me, like, oh, poor me, fuck, poor single Dan Bukestead, it's all about me. Maybe there was some of that initially,
oh
but like the
man.
more I thought about the situation, the more it seemed like it just wasn't a real thing. And then as more time went on, it seemed like she was acting in such a bizarre manner, where like just kind of not quite like fucked up, but maybe fucked up like in a way similar to Diane. So maybe like I thought the character had been affected by the Cooper doppelganger in some way that just kind of made him like maybe we were saying something real and she was just in like some psychiatric hospital, and that she was just such a unpleasant person because she, I don't know, got fucked by evil Cooper, and that's what happened apparently, which apparently happened, unfortunately.
Yeah, that's it's the thing that's not specifically spelled out, but you realize that must be what's happened here. Is that
yeah?
So basically, evil Cooper, Dark Cooper, whatever we call him, apparently went and raped Audrey in a coma, which is the way I interpret it. It's like, oh, that's wow. It's like, hey, he should hang out with this guy on The Leftovers. Anyway, so
that's a theory that I had really pretty early on in the season.
Believe you did. I believe you did. Yeah,
but it's not one that I'm happy I was proven correct on.
Yeah, it's an unfortunate.
Yeah.
The thing with the Audrey stuff was basically every time we saw her, it was kind of virtually the same scene over and over, and her being screechy and annoying. Like really annoying to the point where it's like, oh, wow, could we get Laura Palmer screaming right now? Because I'd rather see her right now. And the way that the person that in those scenes appeared to be her husband was speaking to her in a certain way, and I was kind of like going, there was something off about this. I mean, okay, let me rephrase that. Everything is off in every scene of Twin Peaks. But there's something a bit more going on here, I think. Because just the way, the very calm way that he's talking to her, whatever, I kept thinking it's almost more like a doctor-patient kind of a situation, the way he was dealing with her.
Right.
But then once we actually get, when we finally, after, I don't know how many episodes, it seemed like it was a few, when we finally do get to the Roadhouse, which was another, by the way, this can't possibly actually be happening, because it seemed like this conversation was all on the same night, but it's going over the course of a few episodes, which doesn't make any sense, because obviously days have gone by, although I think Lynch doesn't really care about consistency of time anyway, but still, even so, but to this degree, I don't think he would go this far. But once they're it's the Roadhouse, right? And what happens there, everything from this, was that the scene where they put on like Sharp Dressed Man or something like that?
Yeah.
Which is like, what?
Yeah. I'm not a big ZZ Top fan, so I'm not a huge fan of that song ending up in the soundtrack, the Roadhouse soundtrack that I bought.
Oh, I was excited that was there. So there you go. Because I just thought it was just such it's like the last song I'd expect to hear,
Yeah.
But that, and then her getting the Audrey Horn dance thing going on, and even her a little bit of her music, if I recall. And I was like, okay, if I wasn't sure before that this couldn't be happening, I'm pretty damn sure right now. This is some trippy shit here. This I don't think this is real. Of
Right.
course, the problem with Twin Peaks is, well, I might be able to say that about 40% of the scenes I'm watching the show, but it definitely just was like, okay, this is just getting really weird. So when we get that all of a sudden that jarring moment of her like in like the white room looking in the mirror, and do you remember what she says to herself in the mirror? She says something.
Like get me out of here, let me out of here, something like that, I believe.
Right. Okay. Something like that. And I was like, okay, that everything that we've seen has just been what's going on in her head.
Right.
Now I guess the real question is, do we think that she's still in a coma, and this is her, acting or reacting? Because the fact that her dad never really talks about her or anything makes me think that she's probably just still in a coma or something, as opposed to being in like a psychiatric hospital or something. I don't know how you go from being in a coma to then being in the nut house. Although,
Yeah, well, but of
but
course, if she,
being raped by Dark
yeah,
Cooper would do it. Yeah,
yeah,
that's the
yeah,
one thing that kind of lends itself to that. And then it also helps the theory of that the guy who in those scenes represents her husband, I think is more likely her doctor. And
yeah,
so I'm willing to go. I like that theory. I think it's again, I'm sure it's been said a million times by other people, so I can't, I'm not going to claim credit for shit here. But I'm a little frustrated that
yeah.
we may never know.
Yeah, and it's something that like yeah maybe like Mark Frost has another book coming out in October that'll cover stuff, but so it could be resolved there, but it shouldn't be resolved in a book. That's just not something that that's not something that's too large of a plot point. Even if it's a character that hasn't necessarily done much of anything except be like a sex pot, still very likable, but and pretty much it's just a sexualized dream character that it shouldn't be resolved in a book that 7,000 people are going to read.
Right. If you went through the trouble of making the series and you got the actress back, hey guys, come on.
Yeah,
you can you this see it's stuff like that makes me frustrated about the time wasters, because like you could have given me a little bit more on this, and maybe not uh, like I said, the stuff with Shelley's daughter or Norma and
yeah,
the diner crap, whatever. Although we got that little nice scene with her and Big Ed, but it
yeah,
the problem was that didn't have the emotional heft it would have had. I don't know, 25 years ago, maybe.
yeah.
And I was like, okay, all right, whatever.
Right. Yeah, and I'm kind of like I'm kind of torn both ways on that. Like, well, like yeah, I'd like to see more of this, but like the stuff we saw was kind of unpleasant and kind of uncomfortable. So do I want to see more of Audrey just screeching at some dude that just looks really uncomfortable? I don't know. Maybe do I want them to have like resolved this storyline, or do I enjoy this feeling where like I'm a little frustrated, a little unsatisfied, but it kind of leaves me wanting more so than I necessarily. I mean, I don't know. I'm not going to demand more, but it's
Well,
certainly if they make more, I'll be all over that shit.
right.
But I'm just kind of stuck in this weird position where it's like, yeah, it's not gonna, it doesn't ruin my experience, but I kind of wish they would have. I don't
It,
know.
it would it would bother me less if I knew there was going to be another season.
Yeah,
I honestly don't know, and I might even be surprised if there is going to be, because of how massive an undertaking it was for them to
right.
do this. I mean, they were filming this
And
for
that's yeah.
years, and
That's a really good point too, because like I didn't consider it that way. Like, yeah, if we knew there was going to be a season 4 or a movie or a mini series or something, then the
something
way it ended, yeah,
I'm
like hell
fine with.
yeah,
Oh well,
oh fuck, Audrey's stuck in this thing. Hell yeah, we'll see what happens next. But we don't know if there's going to be a next. And that I had the same experience I had when I watched the show for the first time, and then there was all those damn cliffhangers and that I knew were never going to get resolved. Well, I guess they got resolved, but I remember how frustrated it was, just like wondering like, oh God, you're going to leave me hanging that way.
right.
So
But my
it's
fear is
yeah.
that they may decide to do something else, and then it'll be like another fire walk with me kind of situation. Like, you son of a bitches, you didn't address anything I wanted to know about. You spent the entire movie on Shelley's daughter.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a pretty safe bet too. That like we're just kind of trained till we want to have the answers to some questions resolved. Just we want things to be completed. And Lynch is never going to complete everything. He's always going to leave something hanging.
Right. I'm okay with not having every question answered. I'm totally fine with that. But I don't like things that are just almost randomly introduced as mysteries just for the sake of never being resolved. Like, no, don't do that to me. That's just screwing with you. And I don't care for, because then you're not. I don't respect you. I'm not going to respect you as much as an artist when you pull shit like that.
No.
Again, I went into these final two episodes not expecting most things to be answered. I was okay with that. My thing was I just wanted the culmination of where all the stuff with Dark Cooper, Good Cooper, Real Cooper was going. Would I have liked more of an understanding of certain things? Maybe. Would it have been a better form of storytelling if it wasn't just these huge expositional dumps that kept happening where it's Lynch himself realizing, okay, I have no real way of doing this other than just having one character just say it all. So I would have Gordon just talk all about stuff with Major Briggs and this, that, and the other thing, because it's all in the past. I can't possibly go back and show you it. So it's like, okay, I gotta take notes here because that's a lot of information that you just dumped on me.
I'm never a huge fan of exposition, as you know, and with a storyline and it's so just odd like this. I mean, there's really no other way to like convey information like this other than the big old exposition dumps. So I guess it's a necessary evil, but still, there's always a tone of inauthenticity about them. Wow, I can't believe I said the word without messing it up. To them, that always just kind of feels like well, it reminds me that I'm watching a TV show, and so it pulls me out of it a little bit.
And again, I absolutely agree. And my issue with that's like, well, you're the guys. You've created this universe. You've created this story. So you could have controlled how information is parsed out and how this story could have been told. So it's on them. He's like, you did this in a certain way where you left yourself no option other than to have these chunks of expositional dumpage come here and there. Again, I'm not saying I hated those scenes. They were fine. They were informative. But it was just, but I was so, it's like what you were just saying, but I was so very aware of it. It was it was kind of like, oh, this is how we try to move things forward, because you couldn't do it in a natural progressive storytelling way. You have to have, okay, now I'm going to sit down. I'm going to tell you a whole bunch of shit now. And that happens a few times.
And for me, it was especially jarring, too, because over the course of the summer, I was also rewatching Breaking Bad, which didn't tend to have any very, very, there was pretty much no inauthentic feeling exposition on that show. I mean, instead of explaining something to you, a character would have a reaction or a weird look on their face, and you could figure out what was going on from there. This show wasn't particularly able to accomplish that. And as, listeners to our podcast have known, I mean, I'm totally all about the organic stuff. So,
yep.
I mean, yeah. So yeah.
Let's chat a bit about some more of the more fun stuff. How about the many faces of Cooper?
Oh yeah.
Cause so we've got you got your Dougie, and you've got your evil Cooper, Dark Cooper. Still never decided what to call him. And then we finally get Agent Cooper. Oh, by the way, so when Agent Cooper finally appeared, I literally jumped up and screamed yay. Because I was just, and not because I was so tired, it had nothing to do with being tired of Dougie or any of that other stuff, whatever.
Right, because you'd gotten past the point where I
gotten used to Dougie at this point. But I was just so happy to finally see Cooper, and although obviously earlier in the season when he was in the different lodge situations, whatever, that was obviously Agent Cooper, but he was also kind of Silent Cooper and just sitting there or watching or walking around observing. So that not quite the same. I missed the Agent Cooper and the way he spoke and the way that sparkle he had in his eye, kind of a thing. Which was always what made his performance on Twin Peaks so much fun, because of how different it was than everyone else around him. So when he arises from his coma and he's Cooper, I was like, oh, I'm so happy right now.
That was pretty sweet. I mean, I never got tired with Dougie. I always found it to be really, really just goofy and fun, and I may have almost shed a tear when Dougie was just gone, and real Cooper was back. But I was pretty thrilled about that. I mean, especially after such a long stretch of episodes where just like we never saw that character, and then just like bam, and it just kind of felt like we're watching it, and we just kind of slip into this like, oh yeah, that's it right there.
And then that was one of the nice moves in the, I guess it's early on in the final hour where Cooper basically does up the Dougie doppelganger again. So he actually takes care of them. I thought that was kind of, and I'll admit, for a second there, I didn't realize what had just happened. But again, the person I was watching was mentions oh, of course it's what because that's what they're showing. They're showing the little gold pellet ball thing, which is how you grow these little doppelganger things all the time. It's oh, he just made a new Dougie for them, and now it looks like him. So he's actually Dougie in shape and stuff, and without the goofy hair. So I thought that was kind of a sweet little thing that he did there. Probably one of the only happy ending kind of aspects to anything on this show, at least for one storyline.
Well, yeah, and and it would definitely, it was. I'd say they did a. I mean, not everybody was into it, but the way they delayed our gratification and then brought him back, and I would have been okay with seeing some more of Agent Cooper doing some traditional. I don't know if I would have needed to see Agent Cooper doing some of the lame stuff he was doing in season 2. So the fact that they didn't waste our time with any just like inane drug running storylines or his ex enemies turning people into chess pieces nonsense. I'm okay. We didn't see any of that, but. I would have been okay with a couple more episodes of him. But of course, by the time we get to episode 18, that character is essentially gone again and replaced with, I don't know what the hell kind of version of Cooper we saw in episode 18, but it definitely wasn't
obsessive Cooper. I'm guessing.
Yeah, it definitely felt like there was a bit of the evil Cooper in him there.
Well, I wouldn't go as far as the evil Cooper, but I guess I know what you're saying though. I think he just became so focused on this, like suddenly he just became about this. This was his purpose. This was his point, and everything was the Laura Palmer stuff. Now, why it seems that essentially having sex with Diane, which also went on way too long, and then. Because everything from that point on is now he's kind of like, just, I don't know, that all he's about is now tracking down the Laura Palmer in this. And again, I do genuinely feel I don't think it's I know he says what year it is. I don't think it's a time thing. I think it's an alternate reality or an alternate timeline thing, and I think.
And the whole thing is just so confusing. What happened exactly there? I mean, just what's happening after he's done banging Diane. I mean, just like how the character is acting. I mean, he's definitely acting more like the evil Cooper, like in the scene where he's in that cafe and he's shooting up rednecks and stuff like that. I mean, we basically could have been watching the same mulleted, jean jacketed freaking evil Cooper in that scene there. I mean, I can't. Yeah.
You know what I like to think of it as. Think of it this way. You're a Star Trek guy. We all know that.
Yeah.
And I'm a Star Trek fan myself. I go back, but I'm thinking of original series Trek right now. And of course, now remember the episode where Kirk gets split, and you got it's almost like you got the good Kirk and the evil Kirk, but you realize the good Kirk, he's kind of mushy and wishy-washy, whatever, because he lacks certain qualities that the evil Kirk has, who's a bit over the top, but angry and whatever, and somewhat evil. But he also is the forceful decision-making guy.
The evil Kirk. Go ahead.
So in a weird way, I kind of think with Cooper, when you had like Dougie and Evil Cooper, you kind of had that kind of a situation going on there, you know, to a certain extent. Maybe, and obviously Dougie wasn't the greatest guy because he was obviously cheating on his wife, whatever. But he was just like a big goof. And especially when Cooper becomes Dougie, then he's really, you know, this pure, innocent, whatever. And Dark Cooper represented the more balls to the wall, you know, cold, whatever. And you have to realize, even if we didn't see it that much in the original Twin Peaks, he probably has to have a little bit of that in him. You know, he's a fucking FBI agent. You know, he does shit. You know, so I kind of think that when we see him post Diane sex, you know, whatever, I just think that maybe some of the aspects of that part of him are now have risen to the surface more.
Yeah, but more reincorporated. Right. Yeah.
I mean, so that's why I said I wouldn't say he's evil. It's just like, but that side of him has kind of. Oh
yeah.
Also, because
I agree.
He's also spent the last several days or weeks, you know, being Dougie. I'll keep that in mind. Right. So he's been like, he's veered off to the other side of the road, so to speak. But the more I think about it, the more I feel that that what happened, it's created just an alternate timeline, alternate reality. So it's not a matter of what year it is, because I think it's the same damn year. But I think what happened was that when he tries to save Laura Palmer, and he does, he even though she kind of disappears, it's still he still changed it. He still changed what was about to happen. And I think what we're seeing here is just an alternate timeline based on that. And maybe I don't know if it's a loop there where there'll be other ones as well. But that's why I think when he steps out, because, you know, everything has changed. It's a different reality. That's why the motel is different. That's why there's a different car outside. That's why there's different people own the house. Because, you know, maybe Laura Palmer lived in 89, 90, but maybe at some point she moved away, and so did her family. And then someone else bought the house, and then someone else bought and whatever. This woman's not going to know. The woman, when he rings the bell or knocks on the door, whatever, and that woman comes, she's not going to know the lineage of the house that goes back 20-something years. No. That makes more sense to me. Because then it's 2015 or 16 or 17, whatever this is supposed to be taking place right now. Any other year just doesn't make sense. So I think Cooper's wrong. It's not what year it is. It's probably the same year. It's like what universe is this, or what reality is this?
Right.
That's my interpretation of it. And also, as you know from and a few of our listeners know, whenever we talk about like the geeky shows, whatever, I'm a sucker for time travel, but I'm also a sucker for alternate realities and universes. So if that's where they just went with Twin Peaks, I'm all for that. Except you're probably not going to come back, so it doesn't mean anything to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, you know, the mechanics of this show are definitely not as, you know, I mean, they make the ones in the Flash seem well thought out. But you know, but there's enough here where we can make, you know, a good enough reasonable assumption, you know, like you said, when he's trying to keep Laura from getting killed, and he's just leading her through the woods, you know, forever and ever, and then she disappears. Well, you know, presumably she disappears at that point. You know, that was the point where, you know, that was the time of that night where she got murdered, and then, you know, she just, you know, kind of disappears, and that's that. But as to how, like, you know, everything, just how it works like that, I sure as hell don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. There's part of me that worries that I've actually given it more thought than Lynch himself has given it at some point. Oh, speaking of Lynch, I have to say, also one of my favorite things about the series has actually been Lynch's own performance. I've really enjoyed Gordon a lot on this. Did you ever think that maybe not just because of Twin Peaks, but especially, you know, maybe some, you know, it's clear here with Gordon and Cooper, but I always kind of think that Kyle MacLachlan is kind of David Lynch's stand-in in his stories, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, like he wishes he could be him almost.
Yeah, I mean, just the way I look at it. So in a weird way, I think like Cooper kind of represents, like, he's like the young version of Gordon. And that's how they kind of look at each other to a certain extent. Because unlike any of the other FBI agents that we encounter, the two of them have that kind of that golly gee willikers kind of quality to them. Even though we see that Gordon isn't like that all the time, when he's with French whores and stuff. But
Huh.
but that's
Yeah.
that's David Lynch for you. But
Right. Yeah. I know and I enjoyed how, I mean, there's been, as the Twin Peaks people have been bitching at each other in the last week. I mean, there's been a lot of like, Lynch hates all women and Lynch hates, minorities because he doesn't cast enough of them and all this stuff. Whatever. Maybe these are valid, maybe they're not. But just the fact that if Lynch hates women and he's just this like pig that just wants to bang hot chicks all the time, he sure as hell is like making sure like the camera is definitely pointing out the fact that if he is like that, like, hey everybody, look, this is like how I am, so I'm not really sure like what he's trying to do there, but like he's definitely not portraying himself as like not a dirty old man, I guess. So that's like why they're doing that. And just like like the way they show the female agent that's working with him and Albert, like they just shoot like they just put the camera right in her ass and shoot like that. I mean, they're doing that deliberately, and I don't know if it's sexist to do that if you're doing it like to make, if it's like you're making it look like that. I can't word, you can probably word this whatever, but like he's not doing it to like, he's just doing that to like make it, he's pointing out like, yeah, Gordon's just standing there leering at this woman walking away from him, so he's not trying to make it seem like he's like the coolest guy ever. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that.
Yeah, it's
maybe
I look at it this way. He's clearly aware of that criticism of his work.
Yeah,
I would, without getting into it much myself, I would just say it's a valid criticism, especially the stuff regarding women. I've seen it on this show and other work of his, but I don't get it. It's almost vaguely reminiscent of, it's almost like Woody
Hitchcock.
Allen
Or Hitchcock.
Oh, Hitchcock, yeah. And actually, it's funny, the Hitchcock thing. I was mentioning this online a week ago, and someone was pointing out some stuff about the series and stuff that looked weird or fake or CGI, whatever. I was like, no, they're doing that deliberately. I mean, obviously, they could they can make things look a lot better than they do, and they don't. But it's done deliberately because it's almost the lo-fi quality of some of the effects, which really didn't take that much to do, kind of lends itself to being that much more unsettling than if it was done more realistically.
Yeah,
and
the people that don't get that are just dumb. I saw some people whining that the CGI was bad. I'm just like, no, they gave this guy a fucking blank check, and he decided to use like like a clay model instead. I mean, they're doing this on purpose. It's not like. And
the comparison I was making was Hitchcock talked about the art of the artifice, and he would do things in his movies that he could have done in a way which would have been more convincing looking. But he liked the idea that there was something that was somewhat odd, off, or fake, or artificial looking about it because it made it more unsettling. Whether it be,
like at the end of Rear Window, when like they speed up like the way the characters are all like moving fast and jittery, like all of a sudden it just makes it like
yeah, to a certain extent. I'm thinking more about things that are more special effecty. Obviously the famous shots in Vertigo, when he has the vertigo effect. A lot of the stuff he does with the Salvador Dali stuff in what's the movie called? Spellbound. And a few other works of his but he's doing it deliberately, and it's meant to make. And then I realized that makes a lot of sense because it's more unsettling, and that's totally what Lynch is doing. Totally.
Yeah.
If the effect of someone peeling off their face and stuff going on, it was done to look even remotely realistic, it would be kind of like an ew. But I'd also feel like I've seen it a million times. The fact that it's done in such a way where it's just disturbing. It's just really, and it ends up feeling more like art as a result. Which is why I find it. I won't criticize certain things about the series because I feel certain aspects of it do feel very much like a work of art, and that's why I get frustrated by the things that are like, that ain't art. That's just me waiting. It's me waiting online to see the art. Come on, I'm tired of this.
Yeah. It's. I don't know. I lost what I was going to say. Go ahead.
It's okay. It's been a while. Trying to think of other stuff before we wrap this up, because I feel like there's a couple of things we might have wanted to touch on before we close up shop here.
Oh, oh yeah. I guess I'll just say, I mean, like, I went into it, I mean, a big fan of the show, not really, not feeling like I needed anything in particular, not really having any idea what they were going to do, and just kind of, more grateful than anything that it was actually happening, because it was just such the fact that it would come back after such a long time was just so incredible to me. Where, whatever they give me, this is something I never would have expected, and I went into it, with that mindset, and I wasn't disappointed in what I got. And then, and I didn't end up being super critical about it. And this might be, a mirror of like the experience that you and me had with Arrested Development, where, I mean, you were probably more invested in that show. I'd only seen it one time before they released their fourth season, and I just, hated it. And you managed to understand what they were doing a little bit more, even if you didn't necessarily like all of it. But you were more tolerant with some of the stuff they were doing than I was, who I just, couldn't stand it. But it just says something about we're not necessarily, you and me particularly, we're not, fucking fanboys. If there's something we don't like, we're gonna say it, and we're not gonna, be super polite about it. We're not gonna just automatically like something because we liked it in the past. I mean, or else you'd be fucking raving about how Gotham is amazing, and you sure as hell ain't doing that. So I'd say that we go into stuff with as open mind as we can, based on our experiences, and
right.
we're willing, But
look, there's no such thing as a perfect TV show, and I'm always going to, as much as I want to gush about when there's a great episode or a great season, whatever, I'm also not going to ignore something that's off. Even like what I would say like two of the best shows of all time, say like Breaking Bad and The Wire, right? Now, Breaking Bad, I've rarely said anything really negative about Breaking Bad, because I personally think there's not a quote unquote there's not a bad episode in the bunch. That said, does that mean that there's maybe aspects of the first season that aren't great? Yeah, because they hadn't really figured out certain characters yet. They hadn't really figured out Hank yet. They hadn't really figured out Skyler yet. They were still kind of finding their way, and it was kind of it took a little while. I don't think Breaking Bad really gets rolling until we get to the end of the first season, really into the second season. That's probably as far as I go, as far as really being there. But it's something. Yeah. It's significant.
Yeah.
The Wire, same situation, whereas I have very little negative to say about it, because there's a lot of people who say it's the greatest show of all time. They have a good point there. I have a problem with like one of the storylines in the final season, which kind of takes me out of it a little, because the show was so realistic for so long, and I thought it was the one storyline that was like seemed to be pushing it a little bit. But you take and the other thing about the journalism, which was the main focus of that season, as far as topicality, it felt a little been there, done that to a slight extent compared to what I had seen in the first four seasons. Doesn't mean it wasn't well done. It's just that maybe I've seen stories about reporters and journalism and ethics before, whereas I hadn't seen stuff about, the public school system or politics to the extent, local politics to the extent they did in the show, or those kind of things. You know what I mean? So it didn't have to, so that's why the fifth season probably is not. I don't like it as much as I like the first four. But that's like me saying it gets an A- instead of an A or an A+.
Yeah.
But that's I like to think that's how we approach. Even when we used to talk about Mad Men, I had my issues with Mad Men.
Yeah.
And that was that episode. One of the episodes we covered, I hated.
Oh yeah, you still hate the waitress. Yeah.
Oh, I forgot about that. I wasn't even thinking about that. But yeah, the waitress. But that's how we approach. That's how I think we try to approach these things. And I like that also, because that way, if we are going to be superlative about something, that means it's earned it, in my opinion.
Yeah.
We're not just going to gush for gush's sake. I might love Vince Gilligan, or I might love Matthew Weiner's work, but doesn't mean if they do something which is bad or not as good as their other stuff, we're not going to talk about it and point it out, or whatever the show is. So with Twin Peaks, this was a risky proposition from the get-go. And I think your Arrested Development comment was really spot on, because I'm clearly way more forgiving of that than you were. But that is because I was probably a lot more invested in it, because I had seen the first three seasons several times each, burned into my brain. And I had my issues with it. And but I had to watch it the whole way through, and then I understood what they did, and there were some really great stuff later in the season. It was a mistake to treat a comedy in a way that you could get away with a drama. It's like, no, I shouldn't have to go back 7 episodes to now I get the joke. That's a weird way to go about things, because that's what they did essentially. It was kind of like genius on one hand and idiotic on the other hand. But as you know, I did a YouTube video supporting it, so obviously I like the joke.
Yeah.
Or like when the X-Files came back.
Right. And I was definitely more forgiving of its stuff, but that's the kind of thing. But definitely, the more time passes, the more its flaws are coming out to me. But I get the impression that with this, it's going to be a little different, because at least currently at this time, the more time passes, the more I'm liking a little bit more as time goes on here. I keep thinking about it, and I wouldn't say I would be jump on like some of the people some of the reviewers are saying like this is like the most groundbreaking thing that's ever happened, and like everything after this is going to totally drown from that. That isn't necessarily true. I'm not like, I don't like to do the thing like this just happened, this is shiny and new, and I'm going to like assume it's the greatest thing ever. It's very, very good. Maybe they're right. Maybe it'll change something, but I'm not going to throw all my eggs in that basket instantly, because it just doesn't seem warranted. To do that. But it's definitely a really marvelous and really a singular piece of television. I mean,
I don't think this. I personally don't think what they've done is really going to quote unquote impact anything else in the way that, say, the original Twin Peaks had such a massive impact on TV that came after it. Maybe, right. and there's a lot of reasons for that. Obviously, back when Twin Peaks was on, 90, 91, there was really, as far as original TV programming, it was broadcast networks. There wasn't any other venues to watch original programming on. There were no shows on HBO or AMC or anything else like that. There were no streaming services. It was ABC, CBS, whatever, Fox and whatever the hell else. So, and plus, so I just don't think that would be true. But what's interesting to me is I'm thinking about just TV I've watched over the last year, and there have been, definitely a few shows which have really kind of pushed the boundaries and kind of gone out there a bit. I mean,
Mr. Robot,
Legion that we talked about.
Yeah, definitely Legion. Yes,
whatever. Yeah. And even a show that I'm watching, like I haven't watched the finale yet, but like tonight, Preacher. Like these are shows that are definitely have pushed themselves and are doing things which I wouldn't have thought I'd see in television X number of years ago. And you can, and if you want, one can trace that back to Twin Peaks to a certain extent. But now I'm just saying it's a different playing field now. Because back then, when Twin Peaks first came on, everything was pretty much, you had some excellent TV shows, of course, but you didn't have stuff that was like of the mind-bending quality and like that made your head hurt, made you try to create theories. This is this is a decade and a half before a show like a Lost or whatever else. And that's why I think it had such a huge impact. Now it's like we give Lynch all the credit in the world for it. He still made a singular piece of art, and from the surrealness of it to the part 8, which will always be the I can't believe I just saw that episode of television. Yeah. I'll give it all the credit in the world. I'm sure
it'll inspire, some people to do some really, maybe Vince Gilligan will decide to do something just super experimental. Maybe it'll be good. Maybe somebody will, decide to do something, or there'll be one episode of a show that's just completely insane and it'll swing and miss, or it'll be awesome. So, it'll have an effect, but it'll have effect. But there is crazy zany stuff out there like Legion and Fargo and whatever that does crazy stuff that we would never expect.
Hey, even a show I don't think you ever got around to watching it, but like Stranger Things, which I'm looking forward to the second season of. Kind of is an amalgam of a whole bunch of things. Everything you can trace it, everything from X-Files to every other '80s movie, quite frankly. But it's just we have those options. There are those things like that. The OA or whatever the hell that show is called. That another one that kind of went out there and pushed boundaries, even if it had a shitty finale. But so, yeah, I mean, I do think it'll probably inspire some artistry on some people's parts, but bear in mind, this wasn't a show that was very highly rated. I mean, even if it did get some DVR thing, so it's not. I don't know if it's quite the pop culture zeitgeist kind of thing the way the original series was. But
yeah, no, I think it's definitely more in a bubble than it was back then. And back then, of course, to be fair, it was, very, very popular back then, but that was more of a, the people that were watching it back then were watching for a different reason. They wanted to know who the killer was, and then once they found it out, then they jumped ship. So it's a different kind of person that's watching this than was watching that. I mean,
True.
The people that watched that found out what happened and then jumped ship. Yeah, they may have jumped ship before the shitty stuff started happening in the second season, but I'm not going to say I have a ton of respect for the people that just were watched it. They're like a single issue voter. I guess it's an analogy that kind of was okay.
Wow, that's probably the closest we've come to any political conversation on the podcast tonight, and we're going to steer away from all that. Yeah, that's actually a good point. I never really thought about it that way. That's true. Although I won't blame. If they bailed because that's who Bob turned out to be, okay, I'm done. That's lame. If they bailed because that's who Bob turned out to be, and then they watched it and were like, this show's getting kind of annoying now. I don't need to watch it anymore. I'll be more forgiving of those people because I was like,
right.
Part of me thinks I wish I should have done that, but no, whatever. Anyway, okay, it's. Yeah. Wow, our first podcast back, and I think we're closing in on the 2-hour mark. So,
nice. Well, I guess I'll summarize it. Yeah. So as a whole, I'm very happy with what we ended up with here, and I get the impression that you're definitely much more in favor of this series than opposed to it. So
yes,
I think we're both good, and and as one would expect, we're both assholes and relatively pretty kind of pricks sometimes. So if we like it and other people don't like it, well, fuck it, we don't care about their fucking opinions. We'll want some of the people we respect the opinions of to maybe come on, Cade, maybe give it another shot. If you didn't like it, whatever. But the random the random people that are freaking out right now, fuck them.
I don't record like I said to you another time, I'll paraphrase to make it more fit to what you just said. I don't record these podcasts with specific listeners in mind, and I don't also gauge my opinions by others. I mean, I do. That said, I am mindful of what critics say. I do check that stuff out. Does that necessarily impact my own opinion? I hope not. I like to think it doesn't. It might crystallize things in my mind a bit more as far as trying to articulate an issue I might have. But, anyway, getting into a weird, rambly kind of territory now. But, I definitely overall, I might have a number of issues about it. A lot of this falls into the what the hell did I just see kind of category. But I kind of like having a what the hell did I just see kind of a feeling from time to time.
Yeah.
As opposed to, why are you making me sit through this kind of moments that I had on the show? But I would say I'm glad it was brought back. I think I certainly enjoyed a lot more of it than what I didn't. I love that idea of someone cutting it down to a really great 12-hour series for me. So I would love that. I think I thought this was a much better revival bring back than say the aforementioned X-Files was.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Made me so angry. The more I think about it, the more angry I get.
Yeah, I really hope they kind of make it a little. Yeah, a lot of that felt too damn fake too. So hopefully they get a little bit better. Just more reasonable writing for the next season, which it's been announced now.
Yeah. The problem I have with that is just without going off on too much of a tangent, like that should not have been so hard to do. Writing a handful of episodes of X-Files and for one should have been, quite frankly, fucking easy. And it was 6 episodes, right? I mean, there was one great one,
right.
one or two good ones, and then the bookend ones.
Yeah, they aren't going to age well.
Hated it. Anyway, so okay, I'm sure there's plenty of things we didn't touch on, but we went into this kind of like saying we were just going to have a freewheeling conversation, no notes, no preparation, no whatsoever. So maybe we'll finally get our first review on iTunes in over a year, and it'll probably be another negative one. But fuck you for that. I went back. I said I haven't looked on iTunes in months. I've just forgot about it. It's like I always remember it was 39 and 25, 39, 25. I looked 39, 25. God damn it. We can't just get 40 ratings. We have to have 39. Anyway. But I'm enthused we were able to get back behind the microphones once again, and we could spend that much time just yapping about Twin Peaks and whatever else was on our mind as far as other shows connected to it. And yeah, I think I should wrap this up, right? Yeah, we really should. Yeah. We are hitting the 2-hour mark.
Yeah, it's been fun. We're early in the podcasting season, so we're not quite at the arm wrestle each other until one of them punches the other person through the face mode yet. But
right,
so it's a fun podcast.
I think like I said from this top. Obviously, we're going to be podcasting again. We might be doing it on a somewhat more reduced schedule than we used to because it just got a little crazy.
Yeah, we're busy. We're starting to get busier with our, live
stuff's going on. For example, when we do the superhero shows, it's my idea that we're not going to do them every week. That we might do, and since some people seem to like the super, almost 2-hour podcasts anyway, when we do those, but maybe if we just go, maybe after every third or fourth episode, just do one big one, just covering, where the show is up to at that point and how we feel about it. Might be an easier way to go about it, and just might be easier to coordinate with everybody. And
that'll work nice. Yeah, that'll work nice too. Because then, if there's like a storyline that just really wasn't that important, we aren't going to feel compelled to talk about it. If it's 3 weeks later and we don't talk about it, well, we forgot about it because it was fucking pointless. Right. It saved somebody some time. Yeah.
Right, and also reduce the likelihood of people repeating what other people have to say. Because if you've got 3 or 4 episodes to talk about things, so you can bring up something from any one of them, So if people are still repeating stuff, then we kick them off the podcast.
Yeah.
and again, we may, and I'm sure there may be other things that we might podcast about or just do a random one here or there. I thought about maybe considering trying to do a podcast about The Deuce, but I'm already thinking, I don't got time for that. I have watched the first 15 minutes. I'm really psyched about it so far. I was like, oh, I'm loving this. But I just don't know if I have the time for it.
And we can always jump on, halfway into the season and, just have a, talk about, how we're doing and, talk about, just a few random shows a little bit here. We can talk about Ozark and Deuce and, The Preacher once I get caught up and whatever. Right. Just talk about some stuff, just like conversation.
All the the binging I've been doing, the catch up on stuff over the last
6 feet. I'll be done with 6 feet. I'll be done with 6 feet under before super long too.
I love that whenever I go into Netflix, I still see the continue watching and Star Trek: The Next Generation. I'm like, oh yeah, I left off, and I actually went back and I watched like one random episode. I was like, okay, I got like 1,800 other shows I got to get to. I got to go watch Iron Fist now. God help me. Oh, by the way, I'm going to sneak this comment in right here at the end of the podcast about Iron Fist. I kind of liked it better than Daredevil season 2. Shh. Anyway. Everyone shat on Iron Fist. It was like, maybe because of that, I was like, it wasn't that bad. It was all right. It was watchable. Anyway, if you... let's see if I remember how to do this. Wow, it's been so long. If you enjoyed this podcast, hopefully you would also enjoy hanging out on our Facebook page. It's the Serious TV Drama Podcast page. You can find us on Facebook, like the page, join up and get into the conversations about shows like Twin Peaks and so many others that we talk about there. You can You can also find us, on iTunes, where you can subscribe to our feed. And as I mentioned a few moments ago, hey, rate and review us. Although if you don't like us, maybe don't. You know what? Yeah. I'll take a couple negative ones too at this point, just to see some action there.
Yeah. This isn't a direct threat here, but I can safely say that if you've listened to this for a while and you haven't left a review or a rating yet, you're probably going to get killed by Jerry Horn's binoculars, so maybe get on that.
Fucking binoculars. I love that it took me 25 years to realize that their names were Ben and Jerry. That didn't occur to me. I know we mentioned that on another podcast, but just still marvel at the fact that didn't occur to me. Oh yeah, and you can also follow us on Twitter. We're there at Serious TV Drama Podcast or STVD Podcast or was that was our handle is at STVD Podcast. Wow, that's how long it's been. I forgot our own Twitter handle. Jesus Christ. It's really late. I'm really tired. We should wrap it up. So it was great getting together again with you, Dan. I'm glad that you were chatty, Dan. Today. Awesome. So if it had just been me, we would have only been an hour and a half. Because I can talk. Anyway, looking forward to our next podcast, and now I got to go figure out what pictures I'm going to use for this sucker. So.
All right. Well, Scott, you go have a damn good night.
It's the fact that Dark Cooper didn't want a cup of coffee. That should have tipped them all off. Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You have a good night too, Dan.
Yeah, night.